guess, Commissioner Sisolak's spot a little bit since he can't be here. And I want to reiterate that it's a very tragic thing that we had 2 officers along the line of doing. My hearts and prayers have been with them ever since this happened. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about myself because I am not a career politician, so many of you may not have heard of me, although I have impacted your health care for over a decade. Quietly and in the background through my community service and through my interface with the legislature.
Is that you again, Richard?
And he's adding music to it.
Just sing to that.
We can
Turn off your cell phone.
But Assemblywoman Lucy Flores knows that I have testified on certain bills and I have assisted different lawmakers across the aisle in understanding some of the legislation that comes up that impacts your health care. Sometimes it's education and sometimes it's just drawing the boundaries for our new districts and in the state. So just so you know where I come from, what my background is, I actually grew up in Congressional District 1. I came here as a young girl, and I actually went to junior high school, I went to UNLV, and I also went to our state school. I got 3 acceptances, but I stayed in our state. I have very humble beginnings, so I couldn't afford some of those more expensive colleges and places to go, and I did very well. I ended up having an anesthesia residency that I matched to. That is actually either number 1 or number 2 on the West Coast for us. So that was the University of Washington. So I am someone who actually took the American dream to fruition, and I want all of our youth to be able to look up and do that. I also want to make sure that America stays the way that it was when I grew up. And I saw some changes, which is what pulled me into political life. In my 38 years of my family being here, I have spent 21 of those years being a physician in the community. I have been chair of Valley Hospital's anesthesia department. I have also served on many quality assurance committees throughout many of the hospitals, pharmacy and therapeutics. I also served as the president of Clark County Medical Society from 2009 to 2010. So that gives you an idea of how involved I have been in a little bit of the organized medicine and the political and the making of laws. So I'm not new to the issue, and therefore when I walk in on day 1, I will know exactly how to read a bill and represent all of you. I don't want to lecture you about who I am and what I am, I just wanted to introduce myself. I do want to entertain questions from you, because I think that being a representative requires me to represent you. And there's a vast diversity in this district, and I represent all kinds, because you may look at me and go, well, where were her parents from? They weren't from the United States. My mother's actually born in Puerto Rico, and my father was from Cuba. He was a Cuban exile. So that gives me that perspective inside of our community, which is 44% Hispanic. But I also grew up here, so I know a lot about the casino industry and actually worked in it. I know some things about immigration because of my family's past, and because of the fact that my very first job at the age of 16 was translating documents for an immigration attorney from Spanish to English.
Stand on all this immigration problem we're having
Wow.
right now.
Immigration.
What is that? Because you're going to be involved in that.
Yes, it's a very complex issue.
It is.
It has been going on for several decades. The problems that we have is when people try and put Band-Aids on our immigration system, it actually creates more problems because we're not addressing the whole issue. And for us, the foremost important thing is we want our nation to be safe. And we want to feel good about the people that come into our nation. So in order to do that, we have to be able to share our views. I would welcome any of your views, but most of all, I think that we have to have security of our borders. We don't want people coming into our country that aren't supposed to be here. People that may not have the best intentions about what they could do to us. Our lovely officers that fell were not technically abused by or killed by people that were from out of the country. They were actually people that were from in the country. So this can happen inside our country too. But we don't want terrorists like the 9/11 terrorists walking up in and out of our southern and northern borders or coming across our coastal waters to harm us. So that's a very important issue. We do have to address the borders. We have a lot of technology, a lot of military technology. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that we have to shoot people when they come across the border, but we do have to keep human trafficking in check. It's awful what's happening to people that come here illegally. It really is. It's a shame for our nation. And some people are taking advantage of this. We also have problems with not only the human trafficking, but the drug trafficking. We really have to address this issue because it is tearing apart families. And that is painful for us in a society. We can't have that kind of drug trafficking going across our borders. We have the technology to close down a lot of these tunnels and a lot of the trafficking that happens. We need to start using it. So these are things that actually play into the immigration problem. We have to address them because they destroy the fiber of our nation.
Yeah, and as a doctor, the medical problems also that they come in with, right?
Yes,
Tuberculosis is getting worse.
there are some issues when people come across our borders and haven't been adequately checked or may not have had health care in their country of origin. That is an issue. For us, we treat everybody as physicians. We treat everybody that comes to us. So that is an issue for us as a society as far as the spread of disease. But we all need to be aware that people are human beings too. And we need to be embracing the idea that they're human beings and also being cautious and saying, you know what, there's a way that we need to get you treated before you can interface with the rest of society. There is a legal pattern. There are people that are hard-working citizens that come here, and they come here to work. But those people need to be registered. We need to know where they are for their safety and for our safety. Because they're bad people that come that don't register and don't want you to know who they are because they want to commit crimes and then go across the border when they think that they're going to get caught. And that's something that us in America, we in America are a rule of law, and we want to maintain that rule of law. Yes, ma'am.
You know what? I remember where every January, anyone from another country had to go to the post office and fill out a form by law. And that was sent in, and that was so they could keep track of these people that came, because I've had acquaintances in that have come to go to school, and then they eventually could stay on a permanent basis. But that was wiped out, and when they wiped that, we've just been going downhill ever since that. They can't keep track of who's here, who's not here, how long these kids are in school, regardless of what country they come from. And they're staying here. These friends of mine, they opened a business, they're doing very well, you know, but they came in on scholarships from Saudi Arabia or whatever. So they did away with that. And now they can't find anybody. They can't keep track.
The way they're doing things now is unfair to the legal aliens.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm not against immigration because this country was built on immigration.
Exactly.
Most of the things, if you look it up, who invented these different things? We're from Yugoslavia, Russia, Germany, all over. See, so I'm not against immigration. I'm against letting them have an advantage because they illegally came into the United States. And there's too many politicians that seem to get votes are more interested in that than they are in the good things for the country. So that's why I'm very adamant about illegal immigration.
That happens with the human trafficking. Is what I'm
We had
talking about,
Ellis Island.
slavery.
Ellis Island.
Yes.
Ellis Island, you can punch out your computer and upload everything on my grandfather, my father, you know, when they came from Italy through the 20s and what have you. Everything is on there. Where they went, who sponsored them in this country. And that's where that word "WAP" came from on Italians, is without papers, because they were exiting Italy and France, and because of the cholera over there, you know, they got on tramp steamers, but they all processed at Ellis Island, whether it be Irish, Italians, French, or what have you. But they got a history of who you were staying with, who you were looking for. And then when he went back and got my grandmother, great-great-grandmother, and then came back here, right? When he left, when he came back, you all had to be inoculated and everything at Ellis Island. I have no problems, though, we got immigrant people here running for Congress here, you know, like director of them. And this young lady here running in Florida is running for lieutenant governor. We got a governor that is, you know, Hispanic as well.
Very nice guy, too.
Yeah, he is. I mean, and we have a lot of contributions by Italians, everybody else, like Bert said, though, he's right. You know, it affects the other one. Maybe you wouldn't be able to go to college where they're cutting out the resources and say, well, you gotta limit this program, you can't go there anymore and use it, you know?
Yeah, my experience was probably a little bit different because I actually worked through my whole time in college. I had a very small scholarship and the rest of it was blood, sweat, and tears working in the casino industry or teaching English as a second language or whatever other retail job or whatever I could get as a young person. We only have a certain amount of resources and we need to plan as a community to be able to embrace people that come into our nation. But we have to know, I think the issue that's being brought up here is the transparency of the immigration, which is knowing where people are, what their intentions are, and how they fit into our lovely community. We don't want other people outside of the country dictating who comes into our borders. That is not safe. And we don't want people coming in here and being institutionalized into slavery. I mean, that's not American, and we don't want any part of that. So we do have to address the issue. The issue has to be addressed by creating that transparency that we're talking about that existed during Ellis Island. Actually having records when people come in, how long they stay, what their intentions are, if they were not productive citizens, if they are trafficking drugs, if they are committing crimes. We don't want blanket amnesty for those kinds of people because we don't want to embrace that into our society. So that's how complex it is, but creating the transparency will allow people that want to be law-abiding citizens, become law-abiding citizens, and not necessarily grant citizenship on a blanket basis either. Because not all of the people that come here to work want to be citizens. That is a farce if we start thinking that people want to come in here and just be citizens. There are people that want to come in here for the benefits of America, but their heart is actually in their mother country. And we want to export our American dreams into other countries too, and that may be a very worthwhile way of doing it. So I hope that addresses a little bit about the immigration process.
I like what you said.
So I like to export America, not just import everybody else's problems. Right now we have an issue, and I have not, frankly, looked at all the details, but there are young children being brought into our nation without parents. We should not allow that to happen because these poor children are going to be victims in a system. We don't want them being victims in a system. We want to embrace people who come here so that they grow to be like us and then export them. Any other questions about anything in particular? You know my area of expertise is also healthcare, so you can ask me questions or concerns that you have about that. But I also want to hear your concerns too.
I have a crazy concern. There was the NAACP. Now that we're minority white people, what about a NAAW?
So you're giving me alphabet soup about different organizations.
National what?
NAACP.
NAACP.
Association for the
Right.
Advancement of Color. That's it.
Now we
Right.
should have a NAAW.
For white people, you're saying?
I see.
I know what I gave you. It's a white.
You know what? I would like to kind of mix.
How about mixed?
Something along.
Everybody here is mixed, actually.
Yeah, I'm on 57.
Yeah.
You know, for some kind of a protection now that we're minority.
Isn't-
So we don't get run over.
I think we have to preserve our Constitution. This is what's happening. My ancestors on my mother's side came here and because of the Constitution. They left their country and came here for that. On my dad's side, they came before the Constitution was written. But that's why people are here. That's why some of our friends are here and our acquaintances. They came here for the freedoms. Okay, now the Constitution is being split apart, it's being torn apart, and so if the ones that came here that are not helping, I mean, who wanted things to change, to deviate from the Constitution, I think they're wrong. You came here for a reason, and you should help to keep it so that your kids and generations, if you come in legally, can continue it as it is. But as we tear it down, we're going to become a completely different country. We're going to become a second world country. We're going to become like Mexico. You have the wealthy and you have the poor.
Yeah.
So come here and help us to keep it and preserve it. That's why you came here.
You know, people do come here. And my parents came here. My mother actually came to help her sister go through a divorce. My parents met through a very funny occurrence through my cousin. He actually created the meeting of them. My father came here, and this is hard. He came here because if he would have stayed in his country, Cuba, he was going to be shot. Because he discovered corruption inside of Cuba. So for him, it meant life or death. And on that side of the family, obviously, we all know what's happened to Cuba. So we understand that he had to come here and he had to stay. He could never go back. My father died in the United States, a U.S. citizen. He always wanted to go back to his mother country. So we have all kinds of people. But our founding documents are precious. And when I take the oath of office, the oath involves me upholding the Constitution. I think many of our representatives in Washington, D.C. are forgetting that it's we the people and are listening to special interests. And that's what we're talking about. And that is something that I won't do because I come from the people. Everything that I did was because of the freedoms that are given to us in our Constitution and by God. That's what I did with my life. And I think more people want that opportunity, and the more we circumscribe and start attacking people by putting them in boxes, as the young woman was saying, when we put people, well, I'm a this, and I'm a that, and I'm that race, then we are putting people in silos, and we are no longer the United States, we're the divided states. So for me, the Constitution has to be the basis of all law, and we've lost that. When we start saying, I'm going to take money from you and give it to these people over here, and the law that we have right now with health care is one of our examples, where we're going to take almost $1 trillion out of Medicare over 10 years, and we're going to put it in a program that has to fund other people through Medicaid or through subsidies. That's not the promise that we made to our elderly people. That's not the promise that we made to our most vulnerable. So, any other last minute questions? Because I understand that Assemblywoman Lucy wants to speak for a little bit, and I will stay with you here for questions and answers if you want any. But I think she has a pressing engagement, so I'll let her speak too.
Okay, thank you.